Danny Kelly, our very own, says, serious thought. The word Bazball has become a distraction, a smokescreen for what we're really watching. Average bowling, reckless batting, terrible catching. It doesn't need a funky label. Call it what it is. Rank bad cricket. Let's talk to Mark Butcher. Always delighted to talk to you, Butch. Slightly disappointed this is why we're talking to you, but that's the way it goes. How are you?
Tends to be the way it goes on Australian tours, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's been pretty horrendous, actually. I think this performance from day one might just be about the worst that I can remember from this side. I know Perth was a disaster. However, the conditions there, and we can talk about preparation and all the rest of it as to part of the reason for that. But conditions there do sometimes, and quite often, in fact, lead to matches that end very, very quickly, although not quite as quickly as 2 days. So you can write that one off, maybe. But I think this one, on what was a very, very good pitch, the batting in the first innings, Joe Root's side was pretty horrendous. And we were probably 120 to 150 runs short on first innings, then proceeded to bowl the biggest shower of bananas in the bay on day two. And from there on in, the game was over. Dropped 5 catches in the process as well. I mean, it was pretty horrible from a team that has prided itself on kind of perhaps having setbacks and coming back stronger. But I think the main takeaway is that you've had sort of hard-nosed pragmatism from a stand-in team, really, stand-in bowling attack, stand-in captain, stand-in opener in Australia, proving that sort of freewheeling aggression and very little discipline is no match for that sort of hard-nosed, basic cricket skills when it comes to an Ashes contest, and that's basically where the whole thing has gone wrong.
But if you look, because I watched the whole day's play today, and Stokes and Jacks did bat brilliantly. Like they were so patient. They realised the game situation and they acted on it. And it seems you're sort of watching it going, why didn't someone do this in Perth? Like, what's the problem?
Well,
like a kind of like you can't like this kind of, unless it's going really badly, we can't dig in type thing.
Why didn't it happen in the first innings? You know, Mitchell Starc. So after the first test in Perth, right, Mitchell Starc was clearly the main threat. No Cummins, no Hazelwood, and we played him as though he was kind of like a second teamer having a bit of a trial. Basically, decided we were going to try and throw the kitchen sink at him every time he got the ball, and you figured that perhaps they might have learnt that lesson for Brisbane when Australia's attack was even weaker than it had been in Perth, with them making the extraordinary decision to leave out Nathan Lyon. And every time Stark got the ball in his hand again, they just decided to throw the kitchen sink at him. Now, I've seen Mitchell Stark bowl 20 times better than he did in the first innings at Brisbane. And we donated him sort of 4 top-order wickets by flinging our hands at wide balls without moving our feet. I mean, it was horrendous. And Joe Root stood tall on the burning deck in the innings, and somehow we managed to get to 330 because of that last wicket partnership. But it was so woefully under par first innings that we were always going to be under the pump when we bowled. And then when we bowled with so little discipline, so little control. It was a little bit well, not a little bit, it was a lot embarrassing, really, for a team that is much vaunted in terms of its sort of skill and talent and all the rest of it. It was horrendous.
Mark, Ben Stokes says, and sort of it says as if it's a badge of honour, this England team, we run towards danger. Running towards danger is generally not a good idea. You know, if someone's threatening you with a knife, you run away. Or if they've got a gun, you run away. Someone's head is going to have to roll over this. Will it be his? Will it be McCullum's? Will it be Rob Key's? Or will it just carry on as you were?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I would imagine that things will change, whether that be with the coach, probably not with the captain, possibly with Rob Key, simply because the emphasis on every selection decision, every performance, every sort of extra bit of aggression that's gone into the style of play over the last 2.5 years has been with this assignment in mind. And so therefore, if this assignment goes back, and Australia are only going to have a better team the next time we play against them. That they, 3 of their champion bowlers all missing from this Test match, and we still go down in spectacular fashion, and they're only going to get better. So that the fear is that it could be another 5-0 from here, and that's coming from somebody who had not expectations of us winning the Ashes down there, but putting up a really, really strong fight, and that the idea that this team wouldn't win a Test match down there was faintly ridiculous. But after this performance against that Australian team, you're struggling to come up with any different conclusion. So yeah, I mean, there will be changes, and there always is after an Ashes series. Every 4 years we go through this cycle, and people often, pay the price with their jobs at the end of them.
Ben Stokes spoke to TNT and said, to me it seems a constant theme at the moment that when the game is in a pressure moment, Australia keeps outdoing us in those moments. They say Australia isn't the place for weak men. We're definitely not weak, but we need to find something because we're 2-0 down now. We've got 3 more games to go and we need to sort it. Can you see? And I mean, he makes a good point. We dropped 5 catches. The 2 catches today, like Steve Smith's catch and actually Alex Carey, who kept up beautifully. When you think about, Jamie Smith drops that one, even when Archer was bowling terribly and the rest of the attack were. Archer got one to, Travis had to nick it and we dropped that catch. And in these moments, we weren't at it. But can you see England doing anything differently in Adelaide?
I don't know. I honestly don't know. I hope they do. But they tend to double down, don't they, on the back of defeats? They kind of, the idea is you run towards danger and you go even harder. I mean, I would have hoped that they'd have watched. Australia made 500 in their first innings, right, without a single batter making 100. A lot of the emphasis was around, will Joe Root score 100 on this tour? I remember, I don't know if it was you guys asked me last week, but I said, well, I think he will because he's too good not to. But I don't see that as being the most important thing. I see it as being can a top 6 or 7 function to score enough runs to win you Test matches. And it doesn't matter if one guy scores millions, but if they all contribute and you make enough runs, as Australia did to make 500 in this Test match, then you give your bowlers a chance to win you a Test. If they're capable of landing the ball in the same place more than twice every 10 overs. It's massively disappointing. It really is. And the issue for me is not that there isn't enough talent there or enough will or enough sort of hard work, but it's just kind of being hard-nosed enough to understand that Test match cricket isn't basically a turkey shoot every time you go out and play. That sometimes you have to absorb, sometimes you have to sit in. It's about playing the situation in front of you rather than having an overarching philosophy about this is the way that we're going to play come hell or high water, because it just doesn't. It works. You can bully poor teams like that, but against a team who have an incredibly proud record in the Ashes at home, against a team full of hard-nosed cricketers, you're not going to push them around. You've got to play the game the way that it's meant to be played.
And actually, Australia proved that today because they didn't get a wicket for a session and a half, and yet Nisa, who isn't a top line bowler, kept putting the ball in the same place over and over again, and he eventually got the edge, right?
Yeah, as Boland did, in the early part of the innings too. I mean, and that's why I keep going back to just basics of long form cricket, that you actually have to have the skill and the patience and the discipline to keep doing the right thing over and over and over again. Keep like a drop of water on a stone. You just keep doing it until you wear it out. And that's basically what Australia adhered to. And then you see the brilliance of the catching and all the rest of it. And more often than not, teams that are playing well in Test match cricket, teams that are playing badly, that the brilliance comes in that environment. People are very, very switched on. They're at the job in hand, and when those chances come, they don't go begging. But a team that is kind of all over the place and not entirely sure of what it's doing, and is not bowling consistently, and is making the same error over and over again with the bat, you'll find that they tend to miss chances and drop easy catches. I know that because I was on tours where that happened.
Yeah.
And Mark,
But having said that, on those tours, I don't, people weren't sort of talking about us as teams that were going to go down there and give the Aussies a damn good pasting because we have the skill and the ability in our camp to do so. We put that one to bed, haven't we?
We spoke about Nisa there. From Nisa to Noosa, the England team are going there for a few days R&R. There's talk of a golf holiday. I guess they deserve a few days off after that test, but the optics aren't going to be good, are they? And they're going to get slaughtered for it. As people would say, this is not a serious cricket team.
Yeah, well, Boycott said that, and there have been moments during this test match and the last one when you tend to agree with him. It's been a running theme throughout the McCullum Stokes captaincy about what this team does in its spare time, and so I guess they're consistent. But you're right, the optics are not particularly good, and then all eyes will go into what happens in the lead up to this test? Again, there's no match to go and play. There's no, some of the bowlers looked leggy in that first innings. It was hot, brutally hot on day 2 in Brisbane. And one of the things about playing practice matches is it's not necessarily that people will go out there and score runs and bags of wickets, but you do tend to spend a bit of time out in the field, in the environment and in the heat, which gives you that little bit of hardness when it comes down to it. But that's not what's going to be happening. And that's entirely up to them. Their jobs kind of rest on what happens at the end of every series, but particularly this one. And if at the end of it all it goes terribly wrong, then people are going to be right to point at the preparation, point at what they've done in terms of getting themselves ready for the next assignment, and that'll all go against them in the column that says, change is coming.
But there's always hope. 3 to go. You never know. We'll chat.
There was hope after the first one. Yeah, after watching that, I'm as deflated as because after the first one, you saw. Just how uncomfortable the Australian batting lineup was against the bowling attack. And as I've said, I've been in Perth and watched games enough from Perth to know that can happen on that pitch, because that is wildly different from anything that you see anywhere else in the world. However, this one was an absolute belter. And honestly, we got outdone in that second innings by a guy who wouldn't have got picked for England. Bowls 80 miles an hour, keeper standing up. It's the absolute antithesis of everything that sort of the McCullum Stokes key axis have wanted for winning matches in Australia, and yet that's the thing that kind of put the final nail in our coffin this time round, and that's pretty damn embarrassing for everybody.